Oregon versus Penn State. First of all, Oregon beat Penn State 27-24. And wait, no, that was not the score. Sorry.
Bama game score.
Yeah, that was the Bama game. Sorry. Oregon beat Penn State 30-20. They did not get the 2 points, so that's why it's a 6-point game in overtime. And I was crazy. That was very crazy. I was able to catch the end of the game. I don't know what to think because I did predict Oregon to beat Penn State. We were right because it was a really low-scoring game most of the game, and they definitely got action late in the game, but through 3 quarters, there was only 13 points scored. It was a low-scoring game, and me and Quinn nailed that because not a lot of people were thinking they were thinking that it would be a little bit of a high-scoring game, but stats that told the story were Penn State 3 yards per play in the first 3 quarters. All wide receivers had 3 receptions for 10 yards. And the Penn State box score, Drew Aller had a very quiet game. Did throw for 2 touchdowns, but he was 14 for 25, 137 yards, and a pick. Katron Allen had 12 carries, 54 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches. And Nick Singleton had a quiet game. 11 carries, only 21 yards. That you cannot have. And then 3 receptions for 30 yards. And their receivers did not do good. Like I said, all 3 receivers combined, I read that wrong, had 3 receptions for 10 yards. And Kyron Hudson had 0 catches. Trevor Pena had 2 receptions for 16 yards. And Devontae Ross had 4 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown, so pretty good. But on the Oregon side of things, Dante Moore had a game, 248 yards, 3 touchdowns. The running back, Hill Jr., had 10 carries for 82 yards. Decorian Moore had 7 receptions for 89 yards. Kenyon Sadiq had 6 receptions for 70. Oh, and Gary Bryant had 6 receptions, 55 yards, a touchdown. And then Dylan Thienenman had the game-winning interception. That was definitely a heartbreaker for Penn State fans because they needed that. They needed that win, and I'll tell you why later in the AP poll. But overall, that was a tough game for both teams, and Penn State held in there. But at the end of the day, a win and a loss are the 2 things that separate the game. It's not whether Penn State blew out Oregon in a certain category. It's you lost or you won, and that's really all that you can go by. By looks on the stats, you would think that Oregon blew out Penn State, but it was they still made it interesting, but Oregon got the win, and now they're ranked number 2 for a reason.
Yeah, so the thing that everyone wants to say is same old Penn State, and I'm not going to blame this game on James Franklin. I think he can't win in the big game, but I still think he's a good coach. I just think it's Drew Aller. He had a good overtime besides that pick in the 4th quarter. That's when he really started to turn it on. But the first 3 quarters and the entire offense was just non-existent. The run game, well, that's probably the best part of their offense. They weren't there. Nick Singleton only had 21 yards the entire game. Drew Aller just couldn't get anything going. The receivers that they brought in, they only had 3 catches for 10 yards in those first 3 quarters, 3 yards per play. And then they turned it on in the 4th quarter. Devontae Ross had a touchdown, a big touchdown at that. And overall, these receivers, Trevor Pena, he only got 2 catches for 16 yards. Kyron Hudson had 0 catches. I think he had 4 targets. These receivers, while I do think that their receiving game is better than last year, I don't think that makes up for the absence of Tyler Warren. You're seeing him in the NFL, how good he is and how big of a loss he is for Penn State. And they need somebody on the receiving game to step up. Devontae Ross, he stepped up in the 4th quarter, and then that's when Penn State's offense finally started to click. But Drew Aller, I said this last week, and I've thought this way before we started a podcast. Ever since we've seen him in his first year at Penn State as a starter, he's just not that good. He'll have some good stats against the Nevadas and the Villanovas, but in the big game, it's not James Franklin, it's Drew Aller. And he didn't have a horrible game in the box score, but 137 yards is nothing to brag about. He had the game losing interception where it was definitely a questionable play call because your run game finally started to work and there's no time to lose. Just run the ball. They took a shot, bad throw. Dylan Thieneman made an excellent play. And ultimately for Penn State, my opinion on them hasn't really changed. I knew that their defense was going to be good. Deny Dennis Sutton was just a menace for Dante Moore to deal with. Their defense is going to be good. I have questions on their offense, and they've been answered in the way that Penn State fans are not really hoping for.
Yeah, so a tough game for Penn State fans because I feel like they can never get big wins. And that, sure, you can blow out teams by 50 points, but are those teams going to make a run of the Big Ten? No. You're beating teams like Purdue, Maryland, Rutgers, like all those low-tier teams of the Big Ten. That's what they're beating up on in the past years, but they can't beat the Ohio States, the Michigans, or the Oregons, and that's a big factor in this. And yeah, it's tough for Penn State fans. That's all I'm saying.